everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Functional Spirituality. Hope you're doing well. We're doing pretty good over here with our 8-week-old Jasmine baby. And just slowly settling into the role, feeling really blessed, handling the challenges. For me, probably the biggest challenge has been just the unpreparedness, the lack of training, the lack of certainty, the newness of everything. And it's been a while since I've been just such a novice in a field and, something that's so important, like taking care of a newborn. So if you know any excellent manuals on how to take care of a baby, let me know so I can read it and maybe pass it on to some other mothers. But it's a really strange phenomenon being a young mother, young parent, and having no kind of initiation or training, and just kind of building all the knowledge and experience up from scratch. But there's a lot of love and beauty, and we've got a very, very, very cute baby. I've not really been into babies before, but she is amazing. And today I want to offer a training for you, or an elaboration on a tool that we use pretty frequently on the meditations on this podcast, the RAIN technique, which we go through in a lot of detail and use a lot in our retreats and in our courses. And I will briefly describe the technique, but I want to share like an ingredient or a little piece of this technique, something that really creates the huge shift inside me in my practice, that huge aha moment. So the RAIN technique is a healing technique. It's about holding space for ourselves when we are triggered or in pain. And, we have a lot of techniques, but so often I hear people saying, but what do we do when we're triggered? Or how do I actually change myself? How do I move forward and heal myself? So when we're talking about healing, the RAIN technique it's this excellent tool, but it's really a training, like a tool that we use to work on that heavy, painful, uncomfortable material when it comes up. But it's also a training of how to be and how to hold space. So with the RAIN technique, with healing, what we really need to do is we need to hold a space for that discomfort, for that trigger, that challenge, that, pain inside when it arises in all its different forms, that it's usually on the very surface of it, it's felt like an emotional pain or uncomfortable emotion. But when we, trace it back, it's got many layers, inside of us. It's got a body layer, a mind layer, a kind of energy layer to it, different stories woven in and compounded. So the way to heal that is to hold a healing space for it. The RAIN technique helps that very much. And like I mentioned, there's, we can go through RAIN. It's an acronym. We can go through R, A, I, and N. And, when I'm doing it in a kind of more mechanical way, I definitely get the benefits of recognizing and allowing and investigating and nurturing. I definitely get the benefits of all of those steps, but there's this other magic ingredient. And actually, when I explain it, it's not really magic at all. It's quite matter of fact and maybe even dry, but it's magic because it doesn't just decondition the stress around that particular situation and trigger and melt it and resolve the stress of that situation. It does that, but it also creates a deeper reorganizing of our conditions. So it heals that situation, but it also heals the conditions inside of us that create tension around those situations. And it can be brought in at any time at any letter of the RAIN technique. So at any time when you're doing that practice. And like I said, it also starts to reorganize us. So whenever we're doing healing work, we can really bring this in at any point. So I'll get to that magical piece, but let's just talk about how to do the rain technique, we want to be most probably in some kind of relaxed situation and position. It's hard to do it when you're like driving the car or in mid-conversation. It's not one of those on-the-go kind of tools. It's a more meditative and reflective tool. So it's nice if you can close your eyes and be in a comfortable position, very often like a fetal position or a laying down position or even a meditation seat. And it's also nice if you have a little bit of time on either side of the technique or after the technique, just in case you want to rest or not be rushed to conclude the technique. And you want to drop in as normal. So, closing the eyes, relaxing the body, following the breath inward. If you want to do a top-down tool or a reflective tool where you're using your mind to go into the mind or you're using the mind to go into the body, it's going to be more effective if you can be more embodied first, if you can be more present and inside your nervous system instead of outside and more focused on the world. So the best way to do that is to, take those slow, full breaths, following your breath inward, feeling inside, softening your tissues, getting that inward connection. And it can really just be a matter of a few conscious breaths and you know exactly where to go and how to drop in. Or it might take a little bit longer and you could definitely just listen to one of the meditations on the podcast. A lot of them actually guide you through the rain technique, so you could do one of those. Or just listen to a meditation on the podcast and, you can stop it after the first 5 minutes after you've, really dropped in if you don't want to hear any more outside instructions. And so once you kind of dropped into the body, a bit softer, a bit more connected to yourself and present, then we start with the letter R. So R is recognize. And this is where we turn inward and we recognize or reflect, or we acknowledge, become aware of, is there anything inside that feels challenging right now? And if we're feeling challenged, we're feeling emotional or overwhelmed, then this is where you stop for a moment and you just pinpoint, identify, call out, what is it that I'm feeling challenged by? So just starting with recognize, what is here that doesn't feel good? And then A is allow it to be there. So after we recognize, we consciously take this next step to soften. So to allow, to open up a space of this is okay, where normally when we recognize that there's a problem, we immediately go into tensing around it, wanting to fix it, maybe fear around it, thinking about it. But in this case, we just allow, recognize and allow, and then come back to what it is, recognize again and allow. And these two pieces come together. And then I and N come together, investigate and nurture. So once you've seen what it is and just felt what is it like to fully just allow it to be here. Allow it to be here because it is here. So there's no point in building up layers of psychological and physical resistance against this situation. Just allow it to be here. We can still take actions and defend ourselves and solve and fix. But before we do that, in order to create a space inside of ourselves and in order to create a healing space and a regenerative space and a creative space, we do this kind of healing technique, recognize and allow. And then we take the next steps to investigate and nurture. So we go inward a little bit more and inquire, okay, where is this coming from? Why does it hurt? What do I need? Why is this painful? What's more information about the story? What do I want to say? What's happening here? So we investigate. And while we investigate, we also nurture. So again, not trying to fix or resist, but just holding a loving space. And now I want to share about this magic ingredient, and it can really come in strongly in the nurture part of this technique. And that's while we're doing this technique to remember that this pain, this discomfort, this problem, the challenge, the difficulty that I'm feeling right now is actually just a small, worried part of myself. And this is so powerful when we can become more objective, because as we are going through our day and we're going through our lives and maybe even going through the RAIN technique, we might forget that the reason that this is so painful is not because the situation is painful, but it's because there's a part of us inside that is an anxious and worried part in relation to the situation. So the situation isn't inherently problematic. Where, you can definitely see and perceive, okay, there's a problem here, but the problem is different from the pain that I feel. There's for sure a challenge, or probably a challenge that is difficult, but it feels painful. The reason I'm worried, the reason I'm feeling so tight and anxious about it isn't because the situation is anxious. The situation is just a challenge. But this extra anxiety or worry or fear or frustration, this pain and suffering that I'm trying to hold a space for, we hold a better space. It's not diminishing it and saying, oh, look, this is just a worried part, ignore it. It's to really hold an even more compassionate space, because we recognize that there's something living inside of us. It's a piece. It's not all of us. All of us isn't anxious, and the situation isn't anxious. There's a part of us that's anxious that is very small. It's probably come in place a very long time ago, probably the developmental years, and it's lived with us for so long, and it's compounded. It has a real closeness and a real sense of its own reality that we assume it to be true. And when we believe that the situation is a problem or that I'm anxious, what happens is that our whole system is organized around that belief. So it's like our whole system, our whole being, our whole person believes that there's a problem. There's a lot of fear. But what we want to do is we want our whole system to organize around a belief that everything's actually okay in this moment, but there is a piece of me, a small worried part of me that has a problem. It's coming from the past. It's just a worried part. It's not the whole. And there's a part of me that's wider and that's totally okay and at peace. There's a part of me that's the adult part of me in this moment that's strong, and that, we sometimes think like, oh, this fear isn't even rational. I know I shouldn't be worried about it. Well, this is exactly what's happening. Most of you is the adult seeing things for what it really is, but there's a little worried piece inside. It's just one emotion. It's just one part. When we're doing the RAIN technique and we recognize this in real time, so we're feeling the pain, we're seeing the situation, we're being really fresh and present and looking at what's going on inside. And then in real time, we recognize, oh yeah, I remember that this is just a part. And we hold, holding a space isn't something you do. It's something that happens when you are recognizing what's really going on. Then the space that you hold changes. Before, our whole system was organized around, this is a problem that needs to be fixed. And there's a lot of fear and tension. And it changes to, yes, there's a problem that needs to be fixed, but all of our focus moves from there's a problem that needs to be fixed and that I need to be worried about, to there is a small and worried piece inside of me that I can heal by holding a healing space for. Before, our whole system believes the problem is outside of me, and I fear and I resist life, and I'm compelled to control, worry, or fight life. And my whole system is believing that, is organized around that. And then it changes to, it's not the situation that's creating these feelings. It's a sad, worried piece inside of me that I can nurture and heal. So this might seem kind of abstract. I know not everyone's going to resonate with this, but some people will, and then this is what you have to remember, and it's going to bring magic to the rain technique. But it's kind of abstract. It's about stepping into that more objective space, and it is definitely easier to do this if we have a really clear framework of how these pieces get stuck in our nervous system in our developmental years. If we have a really good understanding of complex trauma and how it gets stuck in our nervous system and how it gets resolved, what are the different conditions that can create these small worried parts. If we have a really good language and understanding around all of that, then recognizing that in this technique is going to be very easy and very transformative. If all of this is brand new, this might not resonate very well, and I understand that, and that's totally fine. And in which case, what you can do is try the rain technique, the meditations about holding a space. There's some podcasts about holding space. We have our healing course that you might have seen we're launching or starting again in March. That's about holding healing spaces. So you can start to learn more about healing and deconditioning from this functional spirituality perspective, going to the free resources page and seeing all of the different healing resources that we have. And then maybe coming back to this episode after you have done a little bit more theory and practice in this area, then perhaps this will make a lot more sense. And why I wanted to bring this is because I do the rain technique a lot in my own personal life and my own personal practice. And we do it a lot, in the spaces that I hold, in the courses and retreats and things. But it really clicks, it really opens up. There's that real internal release that happens when I remember that, because the rain technique can get kind of plugged into that old paradigm of like, I'm doing the rain technique to fix myself. But really, the rain technique is a platform, a tool for helping to remember the truth, the deeper truth of this situation, which is that, yes, this is hard. Yes, I feel anxious or pain or whatever I feel. Yes, this situation is challenging. Yes, I might need to take actions and fix it. But what I really want is to heal myself. And one of the best ways to heal myself is to see things for what they really are, and to see that what's really happening here is that there's a part inside, and instead of trying to do all of this other stuff to heal, I can directly go to that piece and say, okay, I see what's happening here. I see you. Then I can feel you. You is this little piece. And you feel that pain, and immediately it starts to integrate and resolve. And yes, we have to fix it and work on the problem. Maybe. Sometimes we don't even. It's just an internal pain. But sometimes there's something outside we need to actually do in real time and in our adult life. And we will do that. But why I've sat down to do my healing work is for healing. And the way to do healing is to find the pieces that need to heal and to hold a loving, healing space for them. So I hope this has been helpful. As always, would love to hear your feedback. And I really hope you're doing well and that the resources are supporting you. And hopefully we'll see you soon in one of our free meditations or in a retreat or in a class soon if you live here in WA. So until next time, take care and thanks for listening. Thank you for tuning in to the Functional Spirituality Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe by pressing the plus button on iTunes or the following button on Spotify. This is going to ensure that this resource is available and top of mind when you most need it. So please subscribe now.